Hello, this video is the InTouch overview for the version 7 import utility. In this video we're going to discuss how you take a version 7 configuration and use the utility to convert it to a Win91 SIA configuration. Before we get into all that, let's talk about what's new with the new InTouch Direct Connect. First thing, remote InTouch applications. You can now monitor remote InTouch applications. You don't have to be installed on the same computer as InTouch or Window Viewer. You can also monitor multiple InTouch applications at the same time. When you purchase Win91, it will allow you to monitor a single Window Viewer app. If you want to monitor more, that is an additional fee. We're using a new toolkit which uses the Alarm Manager and SweetLink to get alarms and to ACK alarms and request data. So we're not using the older toolkit, which, if you recall, it was giving us a lot of WW heap issues, which also wouldn't let us do remote connections, so we're happy to move away from that. We're also supporting alarm subscriptions or filters. Alarm subscriptions are a way for you to bring in alarms with a filter rather than defining individual tags. So when you add new tags to InTouch and they match your subscription, they'll automatically come into Win911, assuming you set up your subscription correctly. We're also supporting a rate of change and deviation alarms. We did not support those before. We have a new import utility that makes it much easier to import and rather sort and filter through your DB dump file. And will automatically reconnect, so you no longer have to start Window Viewer first and then start Win911, and if we ever lose our connection you have to restart scan and alarm. There is no scan and alarm to restart. Will always connect. One more thing before we get into the actual migration, I want to do a solution overview, or just give you an overview of the new Win911. The new Win911 it's modular, meaning there are independent modules for every major function of the software. And you can categorize these modules as data source modules, system modules, and notifier modules. So the InTouch data source module is responsible for facilitating a connection to InTouch, which basically that means receiving, acting, and importing alarms and getting data values for reports. When you would use version 7, you would launch a single executable called scan and alarm, or you might actually know it as teledac.exe, and it would handle everything. With the new version, each module is its own executable, so if one were to fail, the other executables would be unaffected. So in version 7, if you had a voice issue with Tappy, the whole application would crash. And the new Win911, if the voice application were to crash, you would still be getting alarms, and if you had another notifier, it would still be functioning totally independently from the voice data source. So almost all the new modules run as a Windows service, which means they'll start with Windows, with the exception of a few, and one of those is the InTouch data source. So we need to start the InTouch data source module some way. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that in the next couple slides. So your data source configuration, your actual direct connect will be migrated over. We're going to assume that you're running your InTouch application on the same computer. Remember, we can connect to remote applications now, and that requires entering a node name. So if we're assuming it's local, then your node name is going to be localhost. And you're going to have to figure out how you want to start that InTouch data source I was just talking about. There are 3 ways to do that. You can put it in the startup folder, the Windows startup folder. You can have Window Viewer launch it for you when it starts, or you can just launch it manually every time you log into the system. So here's the actual what gets migrated for a data source. On the left is version 7, on the right is the new Win911. All we needed was the path where InTouch was installed to. We needed access to certain DLLs. On the right, we're migrating the name, and it's really a meaningless name. We're just taking InTouch Direct Connect. You can rename it to anything that you like, and you also need to enter a node name. We're assuming you're running this locally, so we just put localhost there. If you're going to try and connect, or if you just want to connect to a remote InTouch application, you can change that. So now let's talk about the three different startup mechanisms. First one would be if you want Window Viewer to launch it for you. It's the on startup application script. It's saying start app, and I'm pointing it to the InTouch runtime for Win911. So you just browse, you just type that in there, and then every time you launch Window Viewer, it will launch that application, and that application is responsible for getting alarms from InTouch and making them available to the rest of the system. So that is how this would work. I think this is a good method if you're only monitoring a single InTouch application and it's on the same computer. If you are going to do a remote InTouch application, I probably wouldn't do this because the data source needs to be running regardless if the local window viewer is running. So just think about that when you're deciding how you're going to have this data source launched. The next method would be to just put it in the Windows startup folder. Quickest way to do this is to get to that folder. With all the different versions of Windows now, it's one version, it's one way, another version, it's another way. This is the quickest way to do it no matter which version you're on. Open File Explorer, type shell : startup, and that's going to take you to the startup folder for that particular account that you're logged into. You need to be logged into a Windows account that will always be logged in because the InTouch data source runs as an application and it always has to be running. If it is not running, you don't get alarms and Win911 is not functioning properly. So now that you're in the startup folder, all you got to do is place a shortcut to that Win911 InTouch runtime. Do not place the executable in here, it will not work correctly. You can either go to the shortcut menu that's in your, or go to the start menu where we've put a shortcut there and copy it to here. I wouldn't move it, just copy it. Or you can go to the actual Win911 directory where we have the data source runtime, right click it, click create shortcut, and then drag it to this folder. So now whenever you log in, it will be launched when you log in. It doesn't matter if this launches before Window Viewer, so if you log in and this launches and Window Viewer is not running, it's no problem. We'll connect as soon as Window Viewer launches and becomes active. Last one would be to just manually launch it. Go to your start menu, find Win911 InTouch and click on it and it will start. You'll know it's running, by the way, I haven't mentioned this yet, that if you see it on the bottom right in your system tray by the clock, if you see it there, that's how you know it's running. If it's not there, it's not running, or you're logged into the wrong user. And you're not, if it's not there, you're not getting alarms, so it needs to be running at all times. Now we'll talk about tags, how those are brought over. I'm showing you an analog tag for this example. It doesn't matter if it was digital or not, it's pretty much the same process. So in version 7 you had your tags defined in two different places, digital and analog definitions. In the new Win911 is all in one list, so it doesn't matter if you're looking for a digital or analog or a message block. Message blocks are also now supported. Didn't mention that before. You can't do alarming on message blocks, but you can use them for reports. So all your tags are going to be imported that were in your version 7 configuration, and your tag name will be retained. So we'll go through this here. So you've got tag name, that becomes your name in the new product, so nothing special about that. Your description, in version 7 the description would always come from version 7. I'm sorry, your description would always come from InTouch in real time. Didn't matter what you had typed in here. In the new Win911, we're not actually getting the tag description, we're getting the alarm comment. You can think of the alarm comment as the alarm description. So by default, we'll automatically get the alarm comment from InTouch in real time. If you want to have a custom alarm comment, you are able to do that on the tabs where you enable individual alarms. So if you want a custom comment for your level alarms, you can go do that. If you want one for a custom comment for rate of change alarms and so on, you can go manually type those in. Group name, groups become strategies. So I have clicked to the level tab, level alarm tab of the tag we were just looking at, and you can see all these level alarms are assigned to the strategy called reactor. So group name, a group turns into a strategy, and that is what that's how that is mapped. Engineering units aren't supported, so we don't need to talk about those. Your item name is the actual entry that connects back to InTouch. So you can have your name on the top be different than what your tag name is, but the tag name has to always match what's in InTouch, or this particular tag will not connect properly. The rate of change and deviation alarms are not supported in version 7, so they aren't enabled when you import these tags. If you want to monitor those alarm states, you can go to those tags and check these boxes, and then you can select their appropriate strategy and so on. So that's how tags are brought over. Watchdogs, very similar deal. You got your tag name, it becomes your name, description. This is different because Watchdogs are Win91 owned alarms, if you want to say that, and whatever you had in version 7 will be brought over as your description in SIA. Group name, strategy, same thing as before. Item name, that's the tag that you're monitoring. So in this example, I'm monitoring the minute tag. Timeout is set to 2 minutes on the left, so that's in seconds in the new product, so that's 120 seconds. If you have a watchdog that is set to 0 in version 7, which we called 0 watchdogs, those are not supported and those will not be imported. And last thing, the severity. It doesn't matter what you had for priority in version 7. We're assuming these are always going to be your highest severity in the new product. So that's 1,000. If you don't like that, or if you want to change it, feel free to go ahead and change it. So that's everything that's going to be converted. So let's do a live demo and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, so I'm running version 7 and the new Win911 on the same computer. I've created a configuration file from the InTouch demo app that is included with InTouch. So I just did a db dump and imported all those tags. So that gives me a direct connect, or an InTouch data source here. That's not too important for the migration. I've got 10 digital tags. We can look at those here. So these will all be brought over. You'll notice not all of them have their alarms turned on. So these will still be imported, but they won't have the alarm enabled because they're just going to be data tags. I've also got my analog tags, so there's 17 of those. Same deal with the alarm limits. Not all of them have them turned on, so they won't. Some of them will be brought in as alarms, some of them will be brought over as data tags. Wrong button there. Watchdog, I created a watchdog. It's watching the minute tag. I've set the timeout for 2 minutes. And the groups that were created are match the groups that the way that the InTouch tags are grouped within InTouch. We can run the import utility now. If you're running this on the same computer like I am, it'll automatically put these files in for you. If not, you'll need to manually locate the INI file and the MDB file. It's going to give me a summary of what's going to be imported, and it's going to then create the objects, grab everything from the MDB and push it over to the new Win91 system. You may see things about other tags in here, but or other objects, but even though they're not being imported. This iFix warning is a known issue. Don't worry about that. We'll say OK. We'll go over to the new Win91 workspace. We'll go to alarming, go to InTouch, go to applications, and because I had this open while I was importing, I have to hit the refresh button. So here's my direct connect that was created. So you can see that. Again, if you're going to do a remote computer or remote connection, change the node name. We're assuming it's running on the same box, so we've got localhost. Here's my watchdog as it was in version 7, same name and description. My timeout was 2 minutes, so now it's 120 seconds, and my severity set to 1,000. I should have 27 tags in here, and I do. So if I click on one of the discrete tags, this is one that does not have an alarm. So if I click on the alarm tab, it says it's disabled. But you can see I brought in the name and the tag name and and assigned a label that represents the group that it's assigned to. Let's find one that does have, I think the only ones that had them turned on were analog tags. I think this is one. So you can see here are the level alarms. These are the only things that were enabled, and its strategy is set to reactor because that is the group that this tag was assigned to. Rate of change alarms aren't enabled, and deviation alarms aren't enabled. If you wanted to turn those on, you just check the box and choose which strategy you want them to go to. And if you wanted to have a custom comment, you type those in there. This is the import utility. You still doing a DB dump, so you would just find your create a DB dump and then load it in, and then you can select all the tags you want to import. Yeah, but that is basically it for the migration. If you have any questions, please contact our product support team. If you have any questions about upgrading from version 7 to the new product, which if you have a valid support agreement with version 7 you are entitled to, contact our sales team. Thanks for watching the video.